This episode of the Load Bank Report is brought to you by Generator Source. Visit generatorsource.com to learn more.
Businesses who went through these rolling brownouts not only lost revenue, but they lost inventory. And when they went to the insurance company to cover them for their loss, they weren't covered because the brownouts were announced beforehand.
It just takes something out of the normal, or out of the norm that causes the power to go down, or the too many bleeds in the vascular system, if you will. It's where now all of a sudden there's just not enough power because demand has gone way up for some unexpected event.
We want to make sure that when we deploy that generator back out to the customer, that they're confident, we're confident that that generator is going to work when they need it.
Thank you guys for joining us here today on the first episode of the Load Bank Report. We have a very exciting group of individuals here today. So I want to start things off introducing our CEO, Eddie Vettorelli here. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have sales rep, Tyson Payton, and then outside service sales rep, Mark Morar. So thank you guys for coming in today. I'm very excited to kind of pick your brains a little bit. This is a very exciting opportunity.
Very good for having us.
Yes, sir. Before we get things started, I know a lot of people listening right now don't really know who we are, what we do. Let's just kind of go around real quick, and I'd love to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, and more so, I'd love to understand why you're here and what is your personal purpose. So, Eddie, you're the CEO. I'd love to kind of put the ball in your court first, put the pressure on you a little bit. So,
No, thanks for having me. I guess Generator Source is kind of in my blood. I grew up around, my dad had an engine rebuild shop and truck service center. And over the years, it evolved into power generation, mostly sales of used generators. And from there, we really identified that as a niche, an area where there was high demand. And the beauty behind, selling used generators is unlike, selling construction equipment or, tractors or vehicles, things like that get, used up and miles on. You can, take a generator, from behind a bank that is 10 years old and has 100 hours on it, and then, bring it in, refurbish it and repurpose it. So, that's kind of the niche that we've built the brand on, was selling used generators. And from there it evolved into service and card sales and some rentals and things like that. So, Generator Source is, I want to say I was born with the Generator Source name tag, around my wrist, but that's really become part of, who I am and make these from my identity. Just being around generators and engines my whole life. I started in the business, running parts and took it from there to, even before that, tearing engines down, helping technicians put it back together, and then got in more of the management side of things, like parts management and service management, and then the sales, and I've kind of really got a feel for all aspects of the business, and that's kind of helped me in my role, as I've kind of grown into more of a leadership role, and then CEO, being able to identify with all the components of business. So been doing this for 25 years, and don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
That's exciting to see the growth you guys have been having the past years. I started here about 10 years ago myself. So it's been a very wild, exciting ride the past couple of years, and team's slowly growing. We got Mark here now, and the outbound team kind of slowly taking off as well. So very exciting stuff that's happening at the company from what I've seen too. So you guys are probably seeing the same thing. Tyson, let's kind of circle back to you real quick. And what's your background? What's your story? And why are you here?
Well, I've been in sales for a long time. I actually started, I guess you could say, a form of sales way back doing collections, and then went to online account management for computer equipment sales, and then got into retail banking actually. And I was in retail banking for about 15 years, doing everything, kind of like Eddie with this company. I kind of worked my way up to the ranks. I was a teller at one point, I was a banker, worked my way to management, and then I was a multi-site manager. That I had a buddy who worked here, and he kept trying to recruit me. He said, "Hey, this place is awesome. Come work with us." And I kept telling him, "I'm good. I got a good career going. I'm Well, finally, he convinced me to come in and have a conversation. I got an offer that night, and the rest is history. I've been here for 5 years, and I was actually just talking to someone today about I can't even imagine going back into some of the industries I've worked in before after experiencing this industry. It's a cool industry because you're buying equipment that most people don't even realize exists.
Yeah.
And you're like you said, you repurpose this equipment, you sell it to someone who needs it. You find solutions for all different types of needs, everything from aggregate to agriculture to cold food storage or data centers. You get to work with so many different industries and work with so many different needs and present so many different solutions. It's a really cool industry to be in. Every day looks a little bit different, and it's really fulfilling. So that's what I do here. For about 5 years, I've been an account manager, just working to help our clients find solutions to their needs.
Perfect. Awesome. I know the team just to have you here with us, and I know you bring like quite a bit of excitement to the sales team, sales floor every day. So, yeah. So I think you bring in a different perspective from the variety of industry. You're passionate about being able to capture that and also echo that to our customers, our clientele. It's very important. I think you do a really great job of doing that.
Yeah, one thing that Generator Source does a really good job of is building relationships. Yeah, it's not just about selling equipment and check the box off. You never hear from that person. A lot of our business is ongoing relationships, whether it be others in the industry that are needing solutions or just that customer that referred his buddy, that's on the same industry, or that farmer that referred his neighbor because he needs a pivot generator as well or something. So it's really exciting because it is really about relationship building and growing that over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Mark, let's kind of pivot to you real quick. How are you doing today? And tell us about yourself.
Well, doing great as usual. Doing great here, and just to kind of similar advice's background, I've been in sales my entire career. Most of my career was spent in the aviation industry, selling service and some parts here and there.
Yeah.
Started out doing turbines and transmissions, and then that transitioned within the same industry to power generation for the aviation industry, which is basically generators that we do here, but smaller, different frequencies, different voltages. So that lasted for a while, and then we moved to Colorado. I started looking for a role, and this popped up. And came in for an interview, met everybody, and I said to myself, okay, this checks, if not all the boxes, a lot of the boxes. Yeah. And, that was about 2.5 years ago now. And, we're going strong.
Yeah. I think you guys started the same time.
Yeah.
Very nice.
A little bit after you.
Yeah. So. Okay. Very exciting. Very exciting. Well, it sounds like we have a great background between all three of you guys. I know Eddie, Tyson, you all come a very diverse background team, very mixed, which is interesting. I think between the whole sales team here and all of our other locations too, the backgrounds I've heard from other individuals, it's really fascinating to see how everybody applies their different unique skill sets. Both deal with the customers on the front end and on the back end of the equipment too. So that's all I'm very excited to hear. Today, we're going to really focus on this whole core topic of generators as an insurance policy. We mostly handle business applications, obviously, but our audiences listening also have homes too. So this is somewhat relevant to them in some way. I know you guys have a lot to say here, but I know whoever wants to kind of kick it off, feel free. But kind of very high level perspective. We're talking to customers who never purchased a generator before. They're not familiar with these types of systems, the capabilities of them, the scalability of them as well for their business specifically. Why are generators an insurance policy? It's a very broad, open-ended question, but can you guys, wants to kind of, I'm curious to kind of pick your brain just a little bit on just that.
Well, if you think about why somebody purchases insurance, it's for a couple different reasons. One, peace of mind, right? They want to know that if in the event something happens, that they're covered. And two, to protect them against loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's where, generators basically play a role as a piece of insurance to protect against loss of, productivity, of product, of data, and to give them a peace of mind that in the event of a power outage, they're going to keep the lights on and keep their business running. But the real beauty behind having a backup generator is, unlike a traditional insurance policy, generator carries asset value. So you buy, a new or used generator, let's say a used generator.
Yeah.
And, if you use it for 10 years, likely sits behind your building, gets exercised, once a month or whatever that cadence is.
Yeah.
And then, after 10 years, you can recoup some of that initial investment. So that's really, the premise behind having backup generators to peace of mind and protect against loss.
Yeah, it's funny because in sales, they used to teach us there's things people are willing to pay for, right? Peace of mind is top of the list. That's actually what I was going to say if you didn't say it. But there's other things that people are willing to pay for. They're willing to pay for convenience.
Yeah.
They're willing to pay for saving money. If they can pay now to save money later, if they can pay now to make money later. So peace of mind, convenience, all of those things people are willing to pay for. And the cool thing about a backup generator in so many industries is it checks all the boxes. If you've got a company that is doing manufacturing and their production floor, well, I'll just give you an example. I sold a generator to a company that was doing, they were producing cement and mixes. And they said that if one of their drums went down for a day, they told me the number of, or the amount of money they're losing per day. It really paled in comparison to the cost of having a generator in backup. It's so that was, they're making money having a generator there. But the other thing is, you think of cold food storage, they often have more money in inventory at risk of loss at any given point than the cost of a generator. So that peace of mind is really invaluable. People are willing to pay for that. So that's what's cool about this industry. And that's one of the reasons I find it really fulfilling is you get to help people check off those boxes, things that keep them awake at night. You're helping address those concerns and they sleep a little better at night knowing, hey, guess what? There's probably going to be some rolling brownouts because weather's coming up. I don't have to worry about it. My food, my frozen food or my aggregate process or my, whatever I'm doing is going to move forward because guess what? I've got that nice new 2 megawatt, whatever brand generator sitting out behind my building. Yeah. So that's one thing that's really cool about it is they're checking so many boxes.
And it's similar to insurance. And oftentimes a generator isn't just a nice to have thing. It's a need to have.
Yes.
Because there's, NFPA requirements, certain code that requires, especially in life safety, that's, that of a building or a company, a medical facility, or any company, at least here in Colorado, with an elevator, has the backup generator.
Yeah. So your 208 volt elevator for the apartment building. It has. Hey, you know what though, Eddie? What's funny is you say that is I actually had a cold food storage facility a couple years ago. They had to buy a generator because the insurance company they were insured through told them if you report another loss of your inventory of frozen food because of power outages and you haven't protected yourself with the generator, we're going to draw you.
Very interesting.
And they literally, you were just saying, that's a literal real life example. Mm-hmm. They had to have a generator or they were going to lose their insurability, if you will. And then, of course, like you said, the hospitals, if it's life and safety, there's lives on the line. Your lives on the line. Literally, they have to have VCs.
Yeah, and if you talk about cold storage, it doesn't necessarily mean that power goes out and, the food is spoiled. Right. Once it reaches a certain temperature, they're no longer allowed to.
Yeah,
you can't sell it.
Yeah, it could be good. The food could be fine. It's refrigerated now instead of frozen, but it's unsellable.
I was going to say real quick too to Marco, quick based where we're on its topic. Rolling brownouts are a really big thing here in Colorado. I know across the U.S. and certain states. You're out in the field a bit more and talking to our clients here. We recently had a major brownout scenario just last month, I think it was. I remember reading a Boulder County. I don't know if they were a client of ours, but already a cold food storage facility in Boulder.
Yeah, you go. Wine
lost almost I think $250,000 in revenue because they had no backup system in place. Ken, what are you hearing on the field right now? And what is your perspective on all this?
Well, absolutely. I was going to bring up a real world example, but we're talking about this literally happened 3 to 4 weeks ago, and it made the news that businesses who went through these rolling brownouts not only lost revenue, but they lost inventory. And when they went to the insurance company to cover them for their loss, they weren't covered because the brownouts were announced beforehand.
So they could have been prepared.
Wow. So had they have had a generator replaced at that point, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Wow.
that they're having today.
For the
Cost-wise, I would have been worst case. I would think about the same as far as loss goes. But this is a one-time cost. You have the gen, it's never going to happen again if you retain it properly. But in this case, the next year, who knows what's going to happen?
Exactly. So, yeah. Perfect. Oh, kind of going off this topic a little bit, I wanted to pivot to the state of the grid in the U.S. This is a conversation we're having regularly with our clients. We're getting a lot of web traffic from these queries through AI search, and distributed organic search. I would love to get you guys' perspective on. There's so many different angles we can come at this, but between weather, between rolling brownouts,
Demand.
just demand. I don't want
Demand.
I don't know too much can of worms, but AI, these data centers are just annihilating these local grids in all these small communities throughout the U.S. So I wondered if you guys can speak just a little bit about that, what you're going to hear on the field from clients currently. And I really want to talk about the demand right now, these trends, and it's only increasing almost every day at this point, from what I'm seeing from the marketing side of things.
So yeah, well, it's no secret that the grid, especially in the Northeast and areas where it's all just deteriorating faster than they can upgrade it.
Yeah, the infrastructure's aged.
It's only you look at when you think of like an unusual weather event or any sort of weather event like a hurricane or something like that knocks out power. Well, it's not just that. It's areas that, might experience, a big freeze and then, knocks, takes a tree branch and all it takes is one to take out power for hours or, even, car accidents that, somebody hits a transformer but as far as the grid goes, it's not getting any, newer, and it's deteriorating faster than they can fix it. So now, we're seeing just more and more demand for power generation. That kind of parlayed with, this how much they're taxing the grid with this thirst for power that this AI driven thirst for power is one, it's backing up the manufacturers. We're seeing a lot of bottleneck with with lead times as companies like Meta going for hundreds of large generators. So yeah, it's that's the thing about power is there's always a demand for power. We've kind of looked at it as a not only is it recession proof, the business itself, but we grew to it was pandemic proof and we don't see that kind of changing anytime soon. That demand for power.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because it doesn't even take anything crazy. It takes something that's uncharacteristic. Like Texas.
Absolutely right.
Texas a couple years ago
Doesn't
had
take much.
it was a freeze. Here in Colorado,
Exactly.
who cares? But down in Texas, because they don't have the infrastructure to deal with that. They don't have the plow trucks that, whatever it may be. It just takes something out of the normal or out of the norm that causes the power to go down or the too many bleeds in the vascular system, if you will, where now all of a sudden there's just not enough power because demand has gone way up for some, unexpected event. It doesn't take necessarily anything crazy. It just takes one oops by somebody or one unexpected weather event, like you were saying, that can cause, there's areas in the US that are so resilient. I don't know if I'd say resilient, but they're much less impacted by events than others. For example, when Florida gets a hurricane, it used to be our lines were lighting up because people needed generators. Now it's not, you don't see that as much. It's like a hurricane hits in Florida and we don't see a lot of boost in traffic because people have learned to deal with it. They've learned
Become more prepared.
They've become more prepared. But a hurricane hits a little further north on that eastern coast, and our phones are ringing off the hook. So it just a lot of times it just takes something out of the norm, catches you unprepared, and now you're standing there going, "I've got $500,000 of inventory that's going bad," And to your point, maybe the insurance company's going, "Well, you knew this was coming. This hurricane was coming for 2 months." I don't know. That's just kind of the crazy.
But it's also we're also seeing that in the event there's a low pressure system coming and they expect high winds. Now it's shutting power off, so hundreds of thousands of people or sometimes even more, and with that people who don't have generators start to think, wow, this is really an area of vulnerability for us because we're going to be out of business for as long as we talk about seeing the
last month it was days.
yeah, you talk about in the heat of summer with no air conditioning.
Yeah.
But that also plays into our service capabilities, which is really a core competency of ours. Is in the event of power outage like that, even a planned one or otherwise, we're there to make sure that your generator is going to run. And so when they do these planned outages, people with generators, inevitably, a handful of them are going to not start or going to throw codes, or there's maybe some sort of problems where they're going to realize the generator wasn't big enough. And that's where we come in to kind of help make sure that their insurance policy is active and working.
And that's a great point, Eddie. When those brownouts came about, the phone calls we got that week, you probably saw them.
I listened to them. Oh, yeah.
They were a massive amount of phone calls of customers of ours just calling to make sure, hey, am I good? Is this thing going to work? And the good news is that most people who actually have their PM services and are up to date and current, they were fine.
Well, and another thing I've told people this on the phone a lot is, unfortunately, often the conditions that cause power to go down, that cause you to need your generator, can often be the same exact conditions that make your generator not run when you need it the most. It's funny. So it's important when times are good to get that generator inspected and tested and run, because even if it was good when the weather was 70 degrees, it might not be good when the weather is down, where that's what's causing all the problems that you're trying to deal with. So that's one of the things that I always talk to customers.
It's your classic prevention.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't wait until it's going bad.
Yeah. Let's kind of talk about the perception versus the reality of this energy independence. I love that phrase, energy independence. I think that's like the trend that's moving in the direction I'm seeing right now with a lot of our user base, client base. Tyson, Eddie, you guys are pretty much working with the customers directly on the sales side of things, in front of the equipment here in the yard, prepping them, educating them. Mark, you're in the field, see the equipment, walking through the equipment in place with the client.
Yes.
From the sales side of things, how do you approach the client and walk them through not just the buying process, but that peace of mind process? I love that phrase, peace of mind. How do you guys ensure, how are we ensuring that peace of mind with the customer when they're just calling in for the very first time to talk to you guys and kind of understand their energy needs? And then Mark, kind of going off you too, how are you echoing that when you're out in the field after the unit's installed and kind of focusing on that service PM piece? Kind of pick your brain a little bit on that.
Well, I think it really starts with our who we are and our value add. And, we're not just an equipment brokerage company who, is looking to, buy a generator and try to flip it as fast as we can. We've got a tested process that, has proven to be effective, over 40 years. So what we do is, once we acquire a generator, we bring it to one of our facilities. We service it. We do a 32-point inspection. We want to make sure that when we deploy that generator back out to the customer, that they're confident, we're confident that that generator is going to work when they need it.
Absolutely. And for me, from the sales perspective, it all comes down to asking the right questions and making sure that you fully understand the need of the customer. That's been my sales style since I got into sales, was if you ask the right questions, the right open-ended questions, you get the customer talking about what their needs are, what keeps them up at night, what are their concerns, what are their goals, then it really empowers you with the inventory that we have. It really empowers you to be able to almost always find the most appropriate, perfect solution for them.
Yeah.
We don't always have the perfect solution. I mean, we're selling, I have 300 to 400 generators in stock most of the time. Is there the customer's going to call and I don't have well, yeah, that's going to have it, but most of the time, if we ask the right questions and they get the answers together for us, it's then our responsibility to connect the dots and present them the most appropriate solution. And we can often do that. And to me, asking them, how do you feel at the end of the interaction, at the end of the call? How do you feel? And it's good to hear the customer say, you know what, I feel taken care of. I feel like what you're presenting is addressing my concerns or my needs. And there's a lot of peace of mind, not only for the customer, but for us. And that, it feels good to provide the right solution. But it really comes with asking the right questions and then tying the solution back to their initial concern.
Yeah, it's always been my philosophy that making money is just a byproduct of adding value and solving problems for customers. And if we can do that, then
I like that. That's awesome.
We're talking about this. To ask my questions, I love that phrase so much. For the users listening to us right now, what could you guys recommend right now? Who are maybe they have no idea where to start with this. They haven't talked to their electrician maybe, and they're ready to call us. What kind of advice would you guys give all these callers to prepare themselves with that confidence that they really need?
The first thing I always ask is, trying to understand our expectations. Let's just say a homeowner. Okay. It's not a huge chunk of our business, but if we're going to have listeners that own homes, let's give them some value on this podcast as well. For example, if you're a homeowner, most homes have 200 amp service, right? Do people ever use 200? No, people never use 200 amps. So going in thinking I need a 200 amp generator isn't most likely necessary. It's probably something that you don't need. So getting an understanding of, okay, if power was to go down, what's important for me to add power to? And then identifying what that demand would be. And often that does require getting someone who's a trusted, resource for that, like an electrician to say, okay, well, your fridge is going to pull this and your furnace is going to pull this, and getting an understanding of, okay, what are your expectations in the event of a power outage? Well, then once you get certain little pieces of information, like how many amps do you need? What voltage are homes are single phase, of course, but how many amps do you need to run what you need to run in your home? Well, guess what? That gives us virtually all the information that we need to get the conversation started and make sure we're presenting the right solutions, because a lot of it from there becomes preference. Do you want natural gas? Do you want diesel? Do you want, and it's talking to about preferences from that point.
do you want to be able to turn on all your appliances?
Yeah. Do you want everything to run? Do you want the hot tub to run when there's a blizzard? Some people do. I think it sounds great here. But it's like those things are important. It's no different in business.
Yeah.
It's no different in businesses. And, if you have a place that has their office building and then their production plant, and then there may be elements like, well, if it's a power outage, my office isn't going to be full of people. I'm probably not going to be running that part of the building. But boy, this is not negotiable. This has to keep running, because if this process stops, I lose all the materials in that batch. Yeah. I mean, that happens.
Absolutely.
So like there are things that are imperative. So long answer to your short question. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Ask the right questions about what do you want to function in the event of a power outage? What are your expectations for that? And then, okay, what's it going to take to make that happen? And then once we get those answers, we can present them with the right solution.
The easy thing for us to do would be to say, okay, well, your service entrance is X amount of amps. Here's the size generator you need, and we'd maximize, try to get as much.
The most money.
Get the most money into the base generator, but ultimately we want to provide options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very ideal, practical approach to that for sure.
And it is really a custom solution for the customer who's calling in, as opposed to a boilerplate. Okay, 200 amps. Here's what fits there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Taking the time to actually
Understand what the
Mark, from the service perspective, let's to look at some two different angles. First, individuals who have equipment and need service versus individuals who are buying equipment for the first time and have no idea that preventive maintenance is even required in the first place. I know you made many comments in the past about this whole set it and forget it that you kind of hear about sometimes in the field. Can you speak a little bit about that and what you're hearing and seeing and how you're walking the clients through?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the client, and especially in a case where they just purchased a generator, they've just made a really big investment. And where our role is in service is to come in and help them protect that investment.
Yeah.
And show them what it takes to protect that investment. Because a lot of these folks who are new to generators, which I don't blame them. There's not a lot of information floating around about this. You would think you buy a generator, it sits and you're good to go. As long as it's on and powered, everything's fine. Unfortunately, when you learn that that's not the case is when you need the generator to run and you find a problem and then you're clamoring and it's an emergency and things get really expensive. So we try to avoid that situation. So we'll come in, explain the benefits, explain to them why this is needed, basically say that the engine needs to be running for it to stay healthy. And unfortunately, in the generator, it's an engine, but it just sits for most of its life.
Yeah.
And that's the reason you want to get eyes on it more often than not, because things break down. Hoses get dry, fluids break down and don't do what they're supposed to do anymore. So the more you have eyes on the unit, the better your chance of finding something small and fixing it early before it becomes a big expensive emergency.
Yeah. I know. What are some of the typical fail points? I mean, I know what I hear every day. I know you guys are talking to your clients. I know fueling, battery maintenance is huge. These multiple recurring fail points for many of our clients. What are you guys hearing on the phone? And again, what are we recommending to our clients for scheduling service and keeping that schedule in place annually, making sure that these fluids are checked, fuels being replaced and polished? I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, from our side, more is always better, right?
Yeah.
That's not always practical. So generally, if we have somebody looking at the generator thoroughly twice a year, it's going to cover more than 90% of potential emergency situations.
Is there like a recommended annual service package that you guys typically recommend to a client?
Absolutely. So we have a most popular package, let's call it, is 2 visits a year. We'll do one minor service, where we come in, we do a 32-point inspection, we'll check all the fluids, we take samples, and make sure the unit's running like it's supposed to. 6 months later, ideally, we'll come in again for a major service. The major service includes the minor service plus oil change, all the filters changed. We'll do a 4-hour load bank test.
Okay.
Between those 3 separate functions, we're going to be able to kind of suss out any potential issues or any struggles the generator is having and take care of them before they become a risk.
And what we've seen in the past is, or we frequently see, is customers wanting, quarterly intervals. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going out and doing, any oil changing or like that, but we get a technician to go out, do a run test, make sure, it's switching over like through the transfer switch. We check block heaters, we check batteries, because there's a lot of failure points on a generator. Like if you have low battery voltage, it may not start. If you if
You have low cool and it goes. These just little holes like that.
yeah, if your block heater goes out and it's cold weather, diesel engines don't have spark plugs. They combust on heat or fuel and compression low. So if it gets real cold and your block heater failed, then your generator may not start. Or, it may not have to be low on fuel. It might have, there might be some bacteria or something that are out that started to grow in the fuel that plugged up the fuel filters. So there's a lot of benefit to, a quarterly or biannual, maintenance. So somebody that goes out there and puts their eyes on the generator, and that alone, adds a peace of mind.
I would like, before we move on to that too, can you take a few seconds just to explain, because there's a lot of people probably listening that don't know what it is.
Yeah.
What is a load bank? What's a 4-hour load bank?
A load bank is basically a huge resistor, or basically a heater that we take out and we connect to a generator. They come in different sizes, and we will take a unit out on a trailer that's going to match the size of the generator that we're testing. Yeah. The purpose of this testing for diesel generators mainly is to burn off excess fuel and excess carbon buildup in the system. Because as the generator sits, most of the time what's happening is it's starting up once a week or once a month, and idling just to exercise. Yeah. Through that idling, the generator is not getting up to high enough temperature to burn off all the excess material, which is a byproduct of the system, because it's a diesel system. They just do that. Yeah. So if you don't get up to that temperature, it's not going to burn off that material, which over time can cause something called wet stacking, which is generally not good for the engine. It's flammable. It's not a situation where be carbon buildup. A carbon is. So when we do that load bank test, we set the unit on the load bank for 4 hours. We run it through its spaces. We take it in 25%, as high as we possibly can as far as the power rating goes, just to kind of stress the unit out, make sure that everything is working like it's supposed to. But as a byproduct of that, we're also burning off that excess material that's going to prevent issues happening down the line if it's not done. Yeah.
And so a load bank itself is an apparatus that is designed to simulate building load against the generator. So it's basically has coils, and so when you hook the load bank up to the generator, you can apply loads in steps all the way up to 80% or full load, or however much load you're comfortable applying to your generator. We generally recommend 80% load to get the generator
Well, plus we're at altitude.
And our techs will also look at a generator's age, its condition, and they'll apply a load accordingly. Sometimes, generators from the SIP values of the 80s, you do not want to bring that thing up to anywhere near 100%. So you need to keep an eye on the readings and everything and make sure that it's handling the load that they apply.
Yeah. So the purpose is to
Verify functionality.
mimic it's to mimic the demand that the customer might place on that generator in time of need. So like to your point, if it's an older unit and it's significantly oversized for the potential application, well, you don't need to run it up to full exactly blow seals. Well, they're probably only going to use 50% of this unit. Great, run it up to 70%. Make sure that it's carrying what they need it to be, what's performing the way they need it to, with maybe a little room over the top. It's again, it goes back to peace of mind. They know that, hey, when I turn things on, this unit has proven that it's capable of providing the demand that
Right. And believe it, a load from the load bank is probably the highest load that generator is going to see over its lifetime.
Yeah.
Compared to what it's actually powered.
It's truly a stress test. It really is, and it makes sure that it's going to be there. I just wanted to cover that because a lot of
that was a really good point.
a lot of people that don't, it's such common verbiage.
So we assume that people know what we're trying.
Yeah, but it's such a great, it's imperative to run your generator through load bank testing because you can take your Corvette in the garage and turn it on and idle it, and it's like great, but until you take it out and wind it up, you don't really know what it's capable of. And when you need to wind it up, you need to know that.
Well, it's a great example. Like the car is a great example. Like that Corvette, for instance, you drive it for a couple of years. It's your daily driver. Everything's going good. It's well maintained. No problems.
Yeah.
You start driving it for 2 or 3 months. Guaranteed you're going to go into it at the end of that 3 months, start it up. Stuff's going to start going wrong. Yeah. And that goes back towards the concept of it's an engine.
Yes, is it? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it might have a low tire, or the battery, might be, have low voltage, or, it might be hard starting because, the fuel system kind of didn't stay primed. So actually running these things and having the generators on a recurring,
Test.
reoccurring weekly or monthly startups.
Exercise. Yeah, absolutely.
Diagnosing is key. So you found all your problems.
Yep.
Terrific. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Let's kind of switch real quick to compliance briefly. I know I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here. I know different industries have different compliances, but we're talking about generators. I know you guys made a comment earlier about elevators, fire pumps are very all require backup power systems. How can our clients or people as right now, how can they ensure that their generators are not only compliant, but they're getting the proper service that we talked about earlier? And what are some things individuals could do to identify maybe if they're compliant or not with their current structure or their current setup? Can you guys speak to that at all a little bit?
I will be honest, that's a difficult question to answer as a blanket question. And the reason why is because all the industries, often compliance is a moving target.
Yeah.
And even cities in different zip codes and counties, they have moving.
Regions have different code, and there really isn't kind of one canned response to that.
Yeah.
The answer is consult a professional in your area. I know it sounds funny, but we work in Brighton, Brighton, Colorado. We work in Florida. We work in Texas. I don't work in California. California is a whole different world. Even Boulder, Colorado, is a whole different world. So realistically, the only answer to your question, in my opinion, is consult with the local professional that knows the standards for your area. For example, even an automatic transfer switch. In some areas, a service entrance is required per code. Other places, it's a convenience that you pay for.
Yep.
It's not always there really is no blinking.
Yeah. So, if you're close to a school, there might be a noise ordinance, or if you're in a floodplain, you might have to, generator up on, have it elevated on stilts, or there might be different emissions regulations for different states. So it's just
life and safety. They require an annunciator in the building to see what's going on with the generator. Because guess what? You got, an elderly individual, 2 offices down or 2 rooms down having surgery. So they got to have immediate indications, present to know what's going on with that generator. There's fire pumps, like you mentioned then. Fire pumps need to be powered at all times. And often that requires a separate circuit from the building. So I mean, unfortunately that's a very, very much a moving target.
Everywhere's different. The key here is just to reach out to a professional and understand your SCAs more than anything else. Don't rely on the teams that you're working with on this side of the business to give you the information.
Yeah, we often encourage customers on the phone. Look, they'll say, well, I got this. And, my favorite call to take is, I got a building that's 4,200 square feet and I've got X amount of offices. I'm like, that doesn't hit these. It's like, right. Does every office, do they knit in each office, or are they running, high compression pumps in it? It's like, you don't know. Similar to that example is compliance. It's often I can't answer that question. You need to consult with someone. Just like I would tell that person, get an electrician in the building, have them do a load test, see how much load you need to run what you want to run.
Yeah.
Similar to that, it's get a professional in the building that knows the compliance and the regulations for your area to make sure you get compliance.
Perfect. That makes sense to me. Perfect. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to kind of, I know we have some listeners right now who might be in this decision-making phase of this whole generator experience with them, maybe a first time. I'm curious to see if you guys would recommend any advice, tips on good approaches for working with individuals like us here at Generator Source, either approaching that initial conversation, if you building on that confidence. But what are some things that individuals should ensure that they check off the boxes as they are conversating with a person like you on the phone, for instance? Electrician, identify electrician work, working with an electrician, also identifying all of your power requirements. That's one of the first more critical pieces. I'm curious to see if you guys have any more advice that you can offer to our listeners who are not very comfortable with this conversation.
Maybe just overall considerations, there's things you got to think about. Do you have a place inside where you can put this, or is this going to need to sit outside the building? If it is, it's going to need to be protected. Most of the generators that we sell have the protection as part of the enclosure.
Yeah.
What fuel type is appropriate for where you are? Do you want diesel? Do you want complete independence from the grid to be able to provide power? Or, hey, I've got a natural gas line out there and I don't need a lot of power. That's a great way to just have access to power. So, fuel types, where are you going to put it? Do you have an electrician lined up? Those are key things to kind of think about. And then, of course, what are your expectations to be able to provide power to in the event of an outage? And then lastly, I would just say this: come with every question you could think of, write them down, and ask everyone. And that's ask every question you can think of, because at the end of the day, personally, I want to make sure that you're making as educated of a decision as possible, because it goes back to it. That's the only way you're going to have the most peace of mind.
Yes. I guess from the service side of things, once that situation unfortunately happens, how can they be prepared? How can they make sure that they are prepared? And if they need to call us to come out, take a look at the equipment, obviously I'm all for that. But backup plan. Can you talk about that a little bit and how they can stay prepared?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a very simple to stay prepared. Do your preventive maintenance regular. If you do that, you've covered 95% of the possible scenarios that would get you off guard.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend it enough. Of course, again, we'll go back to the more frequently, the better. But in the most part, even if you do once a year, at least you're doing something to where you're not being surprised at a certain point.
Yeah. That makes sense. Perfect. Fantastic. You guys like to add anything else before we kind of wrap up?
No, I mean, to kind of piggyback off what Tyson said, to the customer who's not sure necessarily what they need, try to identify, the need to haves, the nice to haves, and then whatever kind of might just be flush. And so, I need to have a generator. I know I need to have it within X amount of time.
Yes.
I need to have it turn off diesel. And then, I need it to be 480 volts. And then nice to haves might be, I'd like to have something that is, 10 years old or newer, but could be 15 years old if it's nice and I'm confident that it's in good working condition and in just good overall condition. And then the flush stuff could be, don't need sound attenuation, but that'd be kind of nice.
Sound attenuation is a biggie. In some cases necessary, in some cases it's a preference.
Fairly, I need 48-hour runtime. Yeah, 24-hour would suffice. So just, I would say approach it with kind of identify the need to haves, then the nice to haves, and we can help guide you into what might work best, or at least some options.
And as always, if anybody listening has any questions, our wonderful team here is to support anybody and anywhere at any point in time. We're always on standby, and we love talking to customers. I know I do. I know you guys do too as well. So
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
perfect. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for taking the time to do this first episode with us. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know people listening are going to enjoy this conversation quite a bit. And I really enjoyed talking to you guys after the time we get together. So thank you all so much, and I hope we can do this again sometime in the near future.
Okay.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.